Welcome to episode 218 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. Today, we're going to be finding out what it's like skiing in the Arctic Circle, specifically in Svalbard, and looking into some of the great work that the clothing brand Arcteryx are doing on sustainability. Plus, we're going to engage in some complete speculation about Tignes, following some big news from the resort last week. Now, my name is Iain Martin. I'd like to introduce my guest today. I'm delighted to welcome Dominique Showers from Arcteryx Clothing. Hi, Dominique. How are you?
Hi, thank you. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Whereabouts are you today?
I'm based out of North Vancouver, British Columbia.
We're recording this slightly later in the day than I normally do because it's in the morning for you, right?
10 a.m., that's right.
10 a.m. And how's the weather looking in Vancouver just now?
The sun has just popped out. It's a perfect day for a hike, actually.
Yeah, I spoke to one of your colleagues earlier in the day, Livy, who told me she'd been trail running with her dog. It's that kind of day, right?
Beautiful day, yeah. She likes to get out into the forest. It's nice to see the outdoors. It's nice and bright. And luckily, we don't have any smoke right now. So this is a good time. August is usually a little bit trepidatious with the weather and the smoke that we get that usually blows in. So right now, we're fingers crossed. Free and clear.
And a voice that long-time listeners to the podcast will recognise, thanks to his many snow reports from Verbier. I'm delighted to welcome Robin Shah. Hi, Robin. How are you?
Yeah, great, Ian. Nice to join you.
Now, we're on video, so for the benefit of the listener, I can say that there is a beautiful view just behind you. Where are you right now?
So I'm not in Verbier today. I'm a bit further up the Val de Bagne at a mountain hut called Cabane Brunet. So I dragged the family up here on e-bikes and we're staying the night up here. And it's hopefully not about to thunder and lightning behind me.
We'll try and get through it so that we don't get interrupted by the weather. Now, a question I do like to ask all of my guests when they're on the show is, when did you ski or snowboard last? When would that be for you, Dominique?
February in Whistler, BC was the last time I skied. And it was a little bit icy. It was defensive skiing. It was a bit slippery all the way to the top, but it was still gorgeous. It was a beautiful bluebird day. So lovely to get out. I typically frequent the local mountain, which is Mount Seymour, which is right behind us here. And it was just such a gift to be able to go up to Whistler, which is about an hour and a half away from us.
And how long is your local mountain? How near is that?
10 minutes up the hill with switchbacks, depending on how fast you drive.
Yeah. Great. 10 minutes away from your skiing. That sounds fantastic. And Robin, yeah. I think you live in the Valais Valley, so pretty easy for you to get up on the mountain. When were you last skiing?
Well, the last skiing I did this year was in Svalbard, that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But the last day of the regular season was a good one. You will like this one, actually, Ian. I managed to get up to the Doufourspitze, the highest mountain in Switzerland, and skied the Marinelli Couloir, which I've been trying to do for years. And I got a call from an Italian guide a couple of days before saying, Robin, it's the first time it's been in condition for 2 or 3 years. We jumped in the car, raced over, got dropped off by a helicopter at 4,000 metres and ski toured up to the Doufourspitze and skied down 3,000 metres. And it was spectacular.
That sounds amazing. Listeners are probably getting an idea now that Robin does have a very exciting life on the snow. I've done some fantastic skiing with you in Verbier over the last couple of seasons. Been really lucky to go out with you and some other guys. And we're going to come on to Svalbard later on. But let's start with a little bit of news. If you're missing the Olympics, I can tell you that it's only 540 days today until the Milano-Cortina 2026 Winter Olympics. Recently, I've spoken to both Vicky Gosling and Chemi Alcott, interviewed them for part of a series that I'm doing for the podcast. Vicky Gosling is the CEO of GB Snowsport. Chemi Alcott, obviously presenter of Ski Sunday and 4-time Winter Olympian. Another piece of news, but this isn't ski, but I found it quite interesting. BikePark Wales, they've just agreed a new 33-year lease on the 400 acres of Welsh countryside that they have. And they've announced plans that they're going to rewild that. Now, I don't quite know how that's going to fit in with all of the trails that they have there. It must fit in around that. But I love that idea that they're just going to use that opportunity to let it grow. And that'll probably make it, a lot more interesting. I'm going to stick a video into the show notes that tells you more about it. But the biggest news that I've seen in the last week is, and I wrote about this on Skipedia, is that Tignes have confirmed that they are going to be splitting from Compagnie des Alpes. Compagnie des Alpes, listeners, you might know, is a very large French company that owns about 10 French ski resorts, including La Plagne, Val d'Isère, Les Arcs, etc. And this isn't going to happen for another couple of years. But the first conclusion that the rumour mill suggested is that, who knows, maybe they're just positioning themselves to make it easier for Vail Resorts to buy them in a couple of years' time. And Robin, when I was with you in Verbier, we had a lot of discussion about, whether Vail Resorts were going to buy Verbier, and we had the denial from the Verbier lift company. I don't know if anything has progressed with that. But Robin, any thoughts on that at all? Do you think Team could be positioning themselves to join Vail Resorts?
I think you might be onto something there, Ian. That does look all a little bit suspicious, doesn't it? Who knows? We keep an eye on the Verbier share price, and every time there's a rumour, it seems to go up and then it subsides a bit. So it seems to be all right at the moment. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We keep Verbier for the locals, but let's see.
And Dominique, I don't know how familiar you are with this. Evidently, you'll be aware of Vail Resorts and the Epic Pass. I think Whistler is on the Epic. Whistler is owned by Vail Resorts. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, they are.
Yeah, exactly. So, in the last couple of years, they bought, or 3 years now, they bought 2 Swiss resorts and about in Crans-Montana. And it's evident they're interested in buying more resorts over here. So this is, it's all, people are always wondering, the speculation swirling around as to who it's going to be. Another story I came across actually is going to be an indoor slope, a ski resort in Bosnia. I'll put a link into the show notes. It's actually a ski resort, but they're proposing to build an indoor slope on their existing slopes. And that was actually something that Team talked about a few years ago, back in 2016. And really, I guess what I'm doing is segueing through to sustainability here. Global warming is a continuing issue, and sustainability is really important. The reason I wanted to have you on the show, Dominique, is I know, or I'm pretty sure, that you are a vice president of the ReBIRD program and circular planning for Arcteryx. And I'm particularly interested in Arcteryx because of my own experience, and I'll just kind of briefly say what happened is I've got a backpack, and I've used it a lot for touring. You can slot skis on the back for boot packing as well, and it just torn a bit. And you have a store in Covent Garden where they have a repair shop, so I thought, well, I'll take it along to the repair shop. And I got engaged in conversation with one of your members of staff there, and it just seems so interesting, everything that Arcteryx were doing to lengthen the life of products. So I'd like to come to that, but actually my first question is, I wonder if you could just tell us what that Arcteryx logo is about. What's the story with that?
The classic question. Arcteryx was founded originally as Rock Solid in 1989 as a climbing company. So as you can understand and imagine, we absolutely adore rocks, being an outdoor brand. And of course, it made natural sense for us to rename ourselves as a fossilized bird, the Arcteryx, which is a 140 million year old creature. So we are fondly known as the bird, which hence the reference ReBIRD.
I did wonder about that. Okay, now it all makes sense. I was wondering if it was like an acronym or something. I was trying to think, I was looking through the different elements of ReBIRD and trying to work it out. Because one of the things I read on the website is that 65% of the environmental impact of one of the jackets is caused by the creation of it in the first place. And I actually have a panel coming up at an event, and we are going to have a session called Why Today's Ski Kit is Being Built to Last. And I think that's really what the Arcteryx ReBIRD program is all about, isn't it?
I think Arcteryx is all about building gear that's built to last. We have been since the beginning. Our very first outerwear piece was launched in 1998. Most people will say with the Alpha SV, but ironically, it was the Kappa for enthusiasts out there. We've always been focused on durability, extending life. Our team has really been embedded in looking at preferred materials. And because our team is always in the backcountry and in the outdoors, we always think about our impact on the environment. So it's kind of that healthy tension is hand in hand. And so ReBIRD is really essentially about how we can maintain and extend the life of products to keep them out of the landfill. So we start with how we service our gear. Most people don't realize you need to wet wash your Gore-Tex products. And that's like a lot, the misnomer, usually you have to dry clean, et cetera. So that's where we start. We start with education, we start with service, and we really are focused on maintenance.
So that ReBIRD program, it has been broken down into kind of, let's say, different categories. ReCare is all about what you're talking about there, actually educating the consumer into how to look after their kit.
Absolutely. ReCare is your experience at the Covent Garden store related to ReCare specifically. So our ReBIRD service centers and our back of house service is completely focused on education, product assessment. We do leak testing, and we'll also wash and re-proof your gear.
There's some really good videos on the site. One of them, just makes it really clear that if you want your gear to last, you have to wash it. And I think most consumers, including myself, didn't really realize that about jackets.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest questions that we've had through our Google searches. You can see about 5 years ago, everybody was asking how you wash your Arcteryx gear. And so we went on a mission to make sure we could educate everyone on the simplest thing. After so many wears, put it in the wash, throw it in the dryer, and what it will do is it'll reactivate the waterproofness of the jacket, and it'll come out good as new.
That's exactly what the guy in the shop in Covent Garden said to me. I also happened to be wearing an Arcteryx jacket at the same time, and he could see, because it had just been raining, that evidently the waterproofing, had gone. And he said that also it would be possible to retreat it, and that's DWR. Is that right? Do you want to just explain what that is?
Yeah, that's right. That's the DWR, which is durable water repellent. It's a widely used spray material or sponge-on material that is used. We already use a waterproof and breathable membrane, which is Gore-Tex in our case, and then which stops water from getting on the inside of the jacket. But what you want to also stop and create barriers on the outside of the jacket. So DWR is applied to all of our products at inception, and you need to reapply that over a certain number of washes. We can see right away when a product is quote unquote wetting out. It usually happens on the shoulders, and it's our first attempt is wash, retreat, and dry, and we usually try to bring it back to life in that way.
How do you reapply DWR then?
Today, you can we use a C0 DWR, which is much more environmentally friendly. That one is sprayed on, and then you sponge it onto the garment. You let it sit for about 20 minutes, and then you flash it into the dryer for some heat. It needs heat activation for it to work.
So that's about looking after the product yourself. Obviously, I decided to go into the store, but there's got to be a balance between self-repair and taking it back in, getting in contact with Arcteryx again. I mean, you've got a lot of education in there about how you can, repair your kit yourself. Where do you think the balance lies in that?
Personal choice, I would say. Some people are quite comfortable using tools and equipment to be able to learn how to replace zipper parts or to repatch their own gear. Others want a little bit more support. So we offer support in videos online to help you identify what parts and components of the jackets exist and how to identify them and repair them yourself. And if you have zero comfort in doing that, or you just don't have the time, 100% bring it into any of our stores. We have service kits in every single location of Arcteryx. And then at the forefront where we do have ReBIRD service centers, you'll get that extended service of additional wash and DWR application. And we find the engagement with wash is by far the highest, but people will come in for zipper slider repairs. And we've also started to extending our service offerings beyond that as well. You'll see more applied to Covenant in the future.
Extending life of the garments is evidently important. Another element of ReBIRD is the ReGear program. As far as I can see, I had a little look around. It looks like this might only apply to North America. It's not over here. But do you just want to explain what that service is?
Yes, we started our resale program about 6 years ago in the US specifically. It was a pilot program to learn how we could engage with guests who have existing gear that maybe have too much gear in their closets or want to trade it in. So we offered a trade-in program where you get a percentage of the original MSRP of the gear, no matter how much you've worn it. If it's in decent condition, we'll buy it back from you. And then we put those goods back into resale for a new user who possibly doesn't have access to that gear from the past. So it's a really exciting program. We've now extended the program into Canada. We're about to launch our Canadian operations. So it'll be really focused on reducing our impact on carbon and on our climate emissions so that we don't ship product back and forth. We keep it really centralized in the region. And we are looking to come into the UK. So get ready for that.
Oh, okay. Well, definitely keep us on the loop on that, because that'd be really interesting. And that final tranche of the ReBIRD concept is ReCut. And again, I wondered if you'd just explain what that is.
ReCut is our commitment to upcycling. So we look at our virgin raw materials, excess raw materials that we have sitting there. We typically use those excess materials in our repair. We will also use them in creating new products. We also look at post-consumer materials derived from quote-unquote waste where they couldn't be repaired, and we try to figure out ways of upcycling that gear. And the birth of that is this program called ReCut. So we've been dabbling in it and trying to learn how to scale it. I wouldn't say we're at a state of like we've nailed upcycling. We're completely learning by doing. And I would say the same thing for all of ReBIRD. It's a very humble experience. We're humbled every day in the process. What's really exciting is what we're looking to build in the future with upcycling under ReCut.
It all sounds great. I mean, at some point, the company is a for-profit company, right? So how do you strike that balance between being a company that needs to make profits to be able to employ its staff, etc., and those policies that presumably, reduce or limit sales?
It's a healthy tension, I would say. I believe, and a lot of us believe internally here, that you can still grow your business without making new products. That there's other ways of monetizing revenue. And I believe that in the future, most brands should be looking towards that. So thinking about a holistic experience versus just we make something, we put it out in the marketplace, it goes into the garbage, you start over again, which is a linear model. We would like to completely strip that apart and disrupt it. And so our big internal focus right now is how do we think through a circular lens, through our supply chain, through our product, and also through our guest experience. And ReBIRD is a component of that. It's not all of it. But we really need to be looking at our upstream design as well. So we design better gear that lasts longer, and that we design gear that we know people are going to need in the future. But it's an ongoing healthy tension, and it's really what keeps us going.
I had a good look around your website and see there's a net zero goal of 2050. Talk about that balance, or earlier potentially. I'll put a link into that. But it's ambitious, but I love everything that you're doing there. And as I said, having experienced it kind of firsthand, it works, I think, because I feel a closer affinity to the brand than I would have done if I hadn't have been through that experience. So keep it up and let us know when you bring the ReGear program over to the UK. And Robin, I'm guessing you probably got some Arcteryx in your wardrobe somewhere.
I do, and I was just going to say, don't forget Switzerland when you come over to Europe. One of our best young free riders here, Martin Bender, is an Arcteryx rider, so we're fans of the brand.
We are actually looking at Switzerland closely. So we have a repair center there now, in fact, that we work with called Outdoor Repair. They've been with us for over 20 years. Fantastic repair center.
Excellent. And that actually fits in quite well. When I was over in Verbier, I spoke to Anna Smoothy from the Circle Supply clothing company, and they're into renting out clothing so that people don't have to buy it. We're all looking at trying to work out ways to extend the life of kit. But let's segue over to yourself, Robin. You're sitting on top of a mountain in Switzerland at the moment. You mentioned that you've skied some of the highest peaks all over Switzerland, but earlier this year, you were in Svalbard in the Arctic Circle. We've actually covered that on the podcast before. Chris Howie joined us in episode 94. And one of your neighbours, let's say, Xavier de la Rue, I spoke to him in episode 208 about a trip that he did. It sounds quite amazing. Maybe you could just start off by telling us, when you went there and kind of more specifically where it is, actually, for listeners who might not be aware.
Yeah, so we went to Svalbard in the middle of May this year. So as you said, it's in the Arctic Circle between Norway and the North Pole, and the capital, Longyearbyen, is at 78 degrees north. So you have to wait till a bit later in the season for two reasons. So one, you want the midnight sun, so that sort of comes towards the end of April. And the second thing is you need to wait for the sea ice to start melting. Otherwise, it's very difficult to access the mountains, and you have to have sort of long traverses in. So typically the season is from sort of mid-May to early June. And yeah, it's become a more and more popular place for ski touring.
As I mentioned, I've spoken to a couple of people who've been out there, but both of those two, when they went, said that it was very, very cold. Now, you were there in May. You're saying you're waiting for the sea ice to melt. Were you still dealing with pretty cold temperatures?
We were pretty lucky. We had pretty good weather when we were there. So during the day, we had probably 3 sunny days. And when the sun comes out, the sun is out all day and it's quite strong. as soon as the sun goes behind a cloud and the wind picks up, it changes very quickly. So I think from one day to the next, or 1 week to the next, you can get very, very different weather. I mean, we were kind of told to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. But we ended up being quite lucky.
And just to clarify then on the location, so I had a look on the map. I can see it's east of Greenland and north of Norway. How did you actually get there?
So you fly we flew from Switzerland to Oslo, and then from Oslo you fly to Longyearbyen via Tromsø. So Tromsø is kind of the northernmost airport in Norway, and I think it's about 1,000 kilometers from sort of London or Geneva to Oslo, another 1,000 to Tromsø, and another 1,000 further on to Longyearbyen, to give you a sense of. It's a long way north of the northern tip of mainland Norway.
And I like your pronunciation there. I've always called it Tromsø, like an English person, so now I know how to do that. And so when you got there, then you were traveling by boat around the islands, right?
Svalbard is like it's bigger than Switzerland, right? There's like 2,500 people there, but it's a big place. You can go on sort of ski-based traverses. You can also use skidoos there, but the classic way to see Svalbard and ski in Svalbard is by boat. So we had a 1A ice class boat. That's one down from an icebreaker, a great big metal thing, which we spent 6 days on. It's pretty cool. I mean, you get on, and we had some guides, and then you've got the captain of the boat, and they basically sit down. They look at the ice charts, which get published once a week, to try and work out, where's the coastal ice, where's the sea ice sort of breaking up, so where they can access. They look at the weather reports, and then they get some reports from other guides, or like even the plane flying over, they're kind of looking at where do the snow conditions look good, and based on that, they basically come up with a plan. And typically you'll ski either up the northwest coast, or you'll go down the southwest coast. So you go north or south. We decided to go, or our skipper and guide decided to go south. So we basically spent 6 days sailing down the south coast of Spitsbergen, it's called.
Okay, so I'd like to ask you about the skiing in due course, but firstly, I do have to ask you about the kind of risk that you potentially get from polar bears, because my recollection is that any trip out in Svalbard, you have to be armed to be able to go on the mainland, right?
Yeah, the polar bears are a big thing there. So, I mean, you go through the airport, and there's kind of a stuffed version of the biggest polar bear ever caught. So it's there right in front of you. I think there are more polar bears in the Barents Sea, including the sea ice. I think there's more polar bears there than there are people on Svalbard. So there's quite a lot of them around. They basically tell you that we do not want to have a close-up encounter with a polar bear, because these things are pretty ferocious hunters. Yeah, all the guides all have to carry rifles, and not just. I mean, I'm not into my guns, but they have to carry rifles of a certain caliber, because apparently it takes quite a force to stop a polar bear. And the first day, you basically spend doing safety briefings, right? So, have all the guides around you, where will they stop? They'll stop at points where they can see around, etc. Yeah, they take that very seriously.
And did you see polar bears then while you were out there?
We did. Yeah, we did. We saw 3 polar bears in our week when we were there. That was pretty cool. We saw one on the first day. We were just sailing around. We saw a polar bear just on the coast. It was wandering along the coast. And then one night, the skipper saw a polar bear and some cubs. So they woke us up, and we went out in the Zodiacs and watched them from a distance. We were lucky enough to see a polar bear hunting. We came across a bear. It was lying on the ice by like a hole in the ice, and it caught a seal. I think it was a ringed seal. So that was pretty incredible, watching the thing.
So not only do you get a ski touring trip, you get a David Attenborough. You're in a David Attenborough documentary at the same time.
Yeah, I think more people go to Svalbard for wildlife watching than they do for skiing. So the season is longer, goes into the summer. There's lots of groups going up there. Most of the boats are taking people to do wildlife watching.
What about walruses? Are they a danger at all? Because you get quite a few of them.
It's a good question. I don't know. You don't spend a lot of time in the water, as you can imagine. And the walruses, I think they don't move very quickly on land. We saw a few of them. They sort of seem to spend most of their time sunbathing. So they're pretty good to look at. But I'm not sure they're the biggest risk to.
So let's talk about the skiing then. So you arriving to each place by boat. Does that mean that you kind of pull in at sea level and ski tour up?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the boat's pretty big. So the boat pulls into into a bay, into a natural harbour, and then you load your gear onto these Zodiacs. So these inflatable type boats that takes you into the shore. And then typically the snow or the ice just comes right down to the sea. So you usually the Zodiac is pulling up against the shore. There's usually like some ice or snow there. You throw all the gear off. The guide or the hunter gets off first and goes and sort of takes a position just to make sure that you're all safe. You throw your gear off and then you ski touring up from the sea. Yeah.
Yeah, and what sort of altitudes are we talking about then? You're obviously starting at sea level. So yeah. How high do you go up?
The biggest mountain near where we were was 1,700 meters, but we were typically going up peaks sort of 500 to 1,000 meters. You might go up the first one, ski down, then go up again, ski down, and then you'd be circling back on yourself because you would be coming back to finish relatively close to where you might be slightly different position, but the boat's coming to pick you up. So that's typically how it works.
And how was the snow then? Was all that hiking up worth it?
Yeah. The snow is great. It's not kind of deep powder snow. There's great snow cover, and then you've typically got, I'd say we maybe 5 to 10 to 15 centimeters of fresh snow on top. We didn't see anybody for 5 days, right? So you do not see a track when you're there, both on the way up and on the way down. You might think, oh well, I've gone on a ski holiday and I've skied in sort of deeper snow than that, but it's a really magical ski experience.
Yeah, but I will share a link to some of your photos on Instagram, if that's okay, because it looked truly beautiful and, when you say there's no one around as well, just so peaceful, right?
It's literally like a wild frontier. You're ski touring up, you're surrounded by these beautiful mountains and these huge glaciers as well, these big long glaciers, and then you've got this wildlife around you. So we would often see reindeer when we were touring up, and Arctic foxes and birds, etc. And there's nobody else there. There's no mobile signal. I think we had no signal for 4 or 5 days. So you really are focused on the present, right? What you're doing. There's no distractions. It's sunny all day. So we skied at night. So we did a midnight ski tour. We skied in the midnight sun, which is coming from the north. So it's really the only time you'll ever have the sun coming from the north. And the light was just amazing. I think my wife says it was the best ski day she's ever had. Yeah, it's a really magical place. If you get the chance to go, I would highly recommend it.
That does sound amazing. I have to ask you another question as well. You said that you didn't spend or you weren't in the water, but I think I saw you diving into the water, or saw someone diving into the water. Is that advised in the Arctic?
They have this thing called the polar plunge, right? So of course, everybody thinks, oh God, I've got to do it. They actually hook you up to a rope and you jump off the side of the boat. They're a bit worried about people having kind of panic attacks or whatever it is when they go in, because the water, I think it's from -1 to +1 degree or something. So it's pretty cold. You jump in, you don't stay in for more than about 10 seconds. And then they haul you out.
I think it's anaphylactic shock, isn't it? That people can get if you suddenly go into a cold water like that. And they also had the kind of inverse or reverse of a hot tub, a cold tub, right?
No, we had a hot tub. It was amazing. This boat had a hot tub on it, on the back of the deck. They fill it up with water from the engine. So the water that comes and cools the engine gets so hot, they just pump this stuff into the hot tub and they'd stick that out there most evenings. So that was pretty cool, sitting in there with a gin and tonic and watching the world go by.
Excellent. And I watched your video on Instagram, and it gave a real great sense of the trip, all of the different elements that you're talking about there, that the peaceful side of things and beautiful views and the skiing. But there was somewhere in there, it looked like like there was someone shooting at something. What was he shooting at then, if it wasn't a polar bear getting near you?
He was just shooting at some rocks. We were practicing with the rifles and the flares in the scenario where both your guides get taken out by the polar bear. You know, they sort of told you where the bullets were and how to work the rifles and stuff. And one of our boys thought he was a bit of a John Rambo, so he picked up the gun and was taking pot shots at some rocks.
Right. Okay. Well, that's fascinating. And yes, I think it probably is on my list. There's so many places that I would love to go and visit. Dominique, if you obviously fairly north already, in Canada, there's plenty of places you can explore that are a long way up and into the Arctic Circle as well. Have you ever been up to the far north?
I have not been as far north as Robin has. I'm very jealous of your adventures. I would love to spend a couple of weeks of your life to experience it. We do have some beautiful backcountry experiences here, right in our wilderness here. Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. We don't get polar bears. We do get a lot of black bears. Also the good old cougar that comes around the mountain line. So that one you have to watch for and be really cognizant of. But for the most part, we're really gracious and lucky to have what we see here.
You get those viral videos that seem to come out every year of a bear running across the piste in one of the Canadian resorts.
100%. And on the island, you'll see grizzlies as well, just attacking moose. And it's just like, you know, there's a bunch of footage of people in the middle of a wedding and there's a full showdown happening behind the scenes. So yeah, you just get used to it. It's part of who we are.
I mean, that's because, you know, we love the mountains and the activities we like are in the mountains and we share them with everyone else who was there first as well. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you to both of you for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to some feedback now. Now, I enjoy all feedback about the show. I like to know what you think, listener, especially about our features. So please contact me on social at the Ski Podcast or email theskipodcast@gmail.com. I had an email from Paul Langley, who said, "Hope you're well. Loving the podcast. They're getting me through until next season starts." He also asked, is there somewhere to buy last season's rental skis without going to eBay or Facebook Marketplace? Now, I contacted Chris Moran from Intersport, who's been on the show on a regular basis before, to see how they go about it. And he said it's done on a per shop basis. He said that rental skis are used for a maximum of 45 days before they're sold on. They're always well serviced. So if it is good kit, you can buy secondhand. Robin, I wondered if you had any intel on secondhand sales in Verbier or the Valais. Is there somewhere where you can snap yourself up a bargain?
I mean, you see, typically at the end of the season, you see skis outside the ski shops. So they sell off their kind of old rental gear. And I think if you want to sell a second-hand pair of skis, you can probably take them to the shop and they'll take a bit of a cut and sell them on for you. You see quite a lot of them around, but it's typically the end of the season. I think the other place is eBay, right? So you see tons of second-hand stuff on eBay.
And Dominique, Arcteryx aren't producing skis yet, as far as I know. But is there a big second-hand market in skis? We're obviously talking about circularity. It's great to have them used again.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're an outdoor country. So for us, it's like mountain bikes, skis, snowboards, all of the gear is very well circulated here. And it's we have our own internal group that will talk about sharing gear or selling gear inside of Arcteryx. And then there's also marketplace or local shops that will also sell off old gear. So it's very much outdoor culture.
I've got a couple more bits of feedback as well. These are from Spotify, who I regular listeners when I only recently discovered that there's a whole bunch of comments out there. Shaky Jack said, great pod. That was episode 197. Really interesting to hear what Les Arc are up to with their green credentials. Susan Hurst said she really enjoyed episode 192, especially the piece on the Dolomite Ski Safari by Inspired Italy. She said she's been lucky enough to go on 2 of them and hoping to go again next winter. And more recently, a sometime guest on the show, Katie Bamber, sent me a message. And she said, just catching up with the Ski Podcast and listening to the Le Grave section with Sam in episode 214. She said it's very interesting, but you mentioned that you might update the episode mid-July with news of the new lift in Le Grave. Well, Katie, I'm still working on that, and I hope I might be able to include something in episode 219 in a couple of weeks' time. Our next episode will be on 31st of August, and then after that, I'll be bringing out an episode every week again through the autumn and into winter to keep you, listener, full of ski chat. Now, you can look out for our equipment special episodes, when our equipment expert Al Morgan will be joining me to tell us all about the new season's latest kit. Plus, we'll have our regular episodes, and I have some special interviews I recorded over the summer that I know people will find fascinating. So if you like the podcast, there are 3 things you can do to help. You can review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can subscribe so you never miss an episode. Or if you want to, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/the Ski Podcast. You can follow me at Skipedia and the podcast at Ski Podcast. There are now 220 episodes or over 220 episodes of the Ski Podcast to catch up with. I had a look this morning. 198 of those were listened to in the last week, which is just insane. I'm guessing this is probably one of our new listeners catching up with the back catalogue and just going through them all, missing winter and summer. But, if you want to listen, you can do that too. There's so much to listen to in all of those episodes. Just go to theskipodcast.com, search around the tags and categories, and you're bound to find something of interest to you. I also noticed in the stats that while 38% of our listeners in the last week were in the UK, that means 62% were from the rest of the world. 21% were in the States, 7% in Australia, and other listeners as far apart as the Maldives, Egypt, Argentina, and Bosnia. I'd like to thank my guest today. Dominique, thanks so much for joining us in the morning from BC.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Robin, up on a mountain in Switzerland. It looks fantastic. I think the sun's just about going down now. I hope you have a really good night in the refuge. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Ian.
Finally, listener, thank you for joining us wherever in the world you're listening right now. And until next time, goodbye.